Hello to all the debt warriors listening, and welcome back to another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. I'm your host, Katie Fatta. Can you believe it's already the holiday season? That's right, the holidays are here again, which means it's also time to welcome a new year. With a new year comes new financial goals, which is just what I'll be discussing on today's episode. Today, I'll be joined by a regular returning guest, Kim Cole. Kim is the Community Engagement Manager at Navicore Solutions, and she has a wealth of knowledge about personal finance. Kim and I will not only be discussing setting your financial goals, but we'll also be talking about budgeting for the holidays, money mindfulness, financial intentions, and much more. Now, let's get to my interview with Kim. Hi, Kim. Thanks for being on the podcast again.
Katie, how you doing? I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on as always. And, this year's going to be our yearly wrap up and kind of setting ourselves up for next year's financial goals. So before we set our goals for next year, let's talk about our current holiday budgets. Having a budget all year is always important, but obviously it's crucial during the holiday season. So how about we start by talking about some holiday budgeting tips?
Absolutely. Budgeting tips during the holidays is so important, especially with the current state of our economy, everything being so much more expensive this year. Really need to put a focus on that holiday budget. My recommendation right off the bat is to make a list of everyone you're going to buy for, Katie. I mean, it could be everybody from your spouse right down to your mailman. And set an amount for each person. This way, you'll know exactly what you're looking at, how much to shop for. And one other tip, pay with cash.
Yeah.
If you can pay with cash, that's always a great way to start off because it's very hard to overspend when you only have X amount of dollars in cash to spend.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also I would say, in addition to making a list of all the people you need, I'd say make a list of just everything. Like if you're planning on hosting and any decorations you need, or, just write everything down you're going to need to spend money on for the holidays.
Is such a great idea because just look at Thanksgiving. You know, we may not be buying gifts for everyone, but we're all going to be spending extra money on food and decorations and things like that. So very good point.
Yeah, definitely. And at the same time, as we're determining what we have to include in our holiday budgets, I think it's also important to not neglect savings in your budget during this time. So how can we set up a budget that allows us to have extra money in it to save?
Sure. The thing that I always recommend doing first and foremost is tracking your expenses for a month. Most of us cannot say exactly how much we spend to the penny each and every month. And sometimes it's those little things that add up and can really make a difference. So I recommend always starting off by tracking.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then that can help you determine where you actually can have extra money to save. And yeah, that'll help you cut out some of those small things that you're like, oh, I could probably be saving this instead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What I like about tracking is that once I kind of categorize everything and I see exactly where the money went, I'm able to determine whether or not those certain things were important and what really wasn't important to me.
Right.
Which, then makes it a no-brainer. Just like you said, you figure out where to cut from there.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think especially with like debit cards and stuff, it should be easier to track what you're spending. You could just, even if you don't write it all down, you can just go through your app at the end of the month and see what you spent it on. So yeah, I definitely think there's definitely ways to make it easier nowadays. And yeah. And then, it's obviously important to still save during the holidays because, the holidays come around the same time every year, but people are still getting themselves into debt during the holiday season. So you kind of mentioned paying with cash before, but what else can you do to not set yourself up for next year's, like what can you do now so you don't end up in that situation to set yourself up for next holiday season?
Things that I am a big fan of was the old school Christmas club
Mm-hmm.
accounts that a lot of banks had. Unfortunately, a lot of banks don't offer those anymore, but that shouldn't stop you.
Mm-hmm.
This can be done with a good old fashioned savings account. I mean, there are some different savings vehicles, but we can, be very simple with the savings account and just make sure that if looking at this year's holiday budget, you spent $800, your goal for next year is going to be at least $800 and start saving now.
Mm-hmm.
Start putting that money away, space it out over 12 months so you have a good idea of how much you need to save each month. Taking off smaller bites is always better than trying to figure it out in November.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If you can start planning, believe it or not, in January, it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and even and then sorry, if you're not saving the whole year, you're also going to probably have to rely on credit cards once November and December hit, which we don't want to do, of course.
No, if we can avoid it, particularly right now, we've seen interest rates go up six
Mm,
times this year.
mm-hmm.
So, we're definitely going to see higher interest rates with our credit cards. So, higher interest rates equal more money that we're paying out. So if we can avoid that and keep that money in our pocket, much better in our pocket than somewhere else.
Yeah. And, in addition to saving for next holiday season, it's always just good to save in general. So now that we've kind of determined our budgets and found some extra money we have to save, where can we invest this new savings?
That's a really good question, Katie, because,
Mm-hmm.
some things that may not have been a great choice 2 years ago are a really great choice as of today.
Mm-hmm.
One of those right off the bat would be CDs.
Oh, yes.
CDs are always a great savings vehicle. It locks the money up for 6 months or more, but it pays a decent interest rate on that money as opposed to a traditional savings account.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the other things to look at right now, like the high yield savings account,
Mm-hmm.
something that you may not want to leave your money in permanently, but definitely a good way for short term for your savings to make more money.
Yeah. And these two are also great places to keep your emergency fund too, wouldn't you say?
The only thing I caution with the CD with the
Mm-hmm.
emergency fund is that with an emergency fund, you may need to get that money out quickly. And with a CD, you don't have that option. You
Got it.
do, however, with a high yield savings, or the other would be the money market account.
Yes.
So while
Mm-hmm.
while you don't want to be taking money out of them on a regular basis, after a while they do attach fees to some of those withdrawals. um if you needed it, you could get it, no problem. So
Okay.
yes, very good place for emergency savings.
Yeah. And I have a whole I have a whole blog about emergency savings that I'll make sure to link in the description of this podcast. So, new year starts, that means we all have new financial goals. So, how can you determine what financial goal or goals to set going into the new year?
First of all, what I like to do personally is I like to set short-term goals for the new year. Short-term goal is usually a financial goal that I'm looking to achieve in less than a year, even in some cases less than 6 months. It gives me an opportunity to begin saving money towards this goal, but it gets me in the habit of saving. So even if I achieve my goal and I spend that money, I'm already in the habit
Mm-hmm.
of being able to put some money aside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And then, I was also going to say as after you decide your big goal, should people also create smaller goals in addition to their big goal, like you were kind of mentioning?
Yes, absolutely. You know, I've said this in some of our other the other podcasts that you've
Yeah.
had me on,
Hmm.
money is psychological. And if there are ways that you can get yourself into the habit of saving,
Hmm.
such as setting like smaller goals,
Hmm.
leading maybe up to a bigger goal, it at least gets you in the habit of saving. If you've got a long-term goal that's 5 years off and it's to buy a house, that's fantastic. But it's very hard to when money is tight and there's something you really want, it's very hard to put that money away
Yeah.
when the goal is 5 years off. So I do like setting up a short term goals, or just even these like little micro goals where, maybe it's just to buy a new pair of pants
Uh-huh.
for a date in a month, something like
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot that you can do with that.
Yeah, definitely. Those little wins are, they keep you going for that long term big goal.
I agree.
And people set those big goals with good intention, but they might not know how to properly like execute their new goals. So, what would you say would be some first steps someone could take when creating their goal in order to make sure they're going to accomplish it?
Well, you and I have talked at length about SMART goals,
Hmm.
and I know we are both huge fans
Oh,
of SMART goals.
yeah.
I
Definitely.
mean, yes, and being specific. What is my goal? But really, I mean, what am I willing to do to get to that goal?
Hmm.
What am I going to give up, or what other second job am I going to be? Am I really going to do that? Measurable. How am I going to measure this? Traditionally, I like to measure my financial goals by the amount of money that I'm putting away
Hmm.
each and every pay period. Achievable. And basically, with achievable, this to me is one of the most important things. Is it realistic that you're going to be able to meet this goal? I would love a be able to winter in Aruba every year. But the likelihood that I would ever be able to save and still be able to maintain the lifestyle that I currently live, in order to do that, it's just not doable.
Hmm.
I'd have to work 5 jobs. It's just not feasible.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure of that. Relevant. Why is this so important to me? You make sure that your goal is not something that you're shooting from the hip on. It's something that it's really important to you. And then, of course, time bound. You want to set an end date for this. This cannot be an ongoing
Mm.
kind of thing, because you'll never have a date in which you need to set for you to meet the goal, and that could be terrible.
Yeah, I definitely think that's one of the most important parts because I think if you don't set an end date, it's like it's harder to accomplish for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, and saving and paying off debt are two common financial goals that we mentioned. And what advice do you have for somebody trying to accomplish either one of those as their goals? And is it possible to do both at the same time?
Oh, 100%. Because I mean, right off the bat, Katie, I love the theory of paying yourself first.
Yeah,
Taking that
love it. Yeah.
10%, right? I mean, as we're
Hmm.
talking about budgets and how to set that up, that first line item, pay yourself first. I love it. 10% right off the
Hmm.
top goes to me, and it goes into my savings. So if we, right from the beginning, take that 10% out of the equation, we look at the money that we are working with, and we set up our debt repayment based on the money minus that 10% we're saving, and we're making adjustments where needed in order to pay back debt.
Yeah, you definitely can accomplish both at the same time. I think that people they would rather attack one. If they have a lot of debt, they'd rather attack that rather than save at all. But you really should be doing both at the same time.
Definitely. Absolutely. But if you had to only pick one,
Hmm.
that's really tough. What I
Yeah.
suggest is making sure you have a few months in your emergency savings account just
Hmm.
in case, and then start tackling the debt. Because quite honestly, the credit card interest rate
Mm-hmm.
is a lot more than the interest rate you're receiving on your savings account.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at it dollar for dollar, as long as you've got enough to get you through an emergency,
Mm-hmm.
then I strongly suggest tackling some of that debt. It's important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Get the emergency done and then make sure you get your debt out of the way.
Yep.
That's, yeah. So if we're trying to achieve our financial goals, do you think something called money mindfulness can help you achieve your financial goals? And can you just kind of like explain what that is to the listeners?
I definitely I'm a fan of, first of all, I'm a fan of anything that anybody feels can help them achieve their financial goals right off the bat.
Yeah.
I mean, money mindfulness is a kind of a new buzzword
Yeah, I'd say
kind of
that.
going around.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely a way to kind of look at how you're doing things. So it really is, in simple terms, paying, when you're paying back your debt or when you're looking at your finances, it really is just being present and aware of what's going on.
Right.
Like we said earlier, money is very psychological. And when you look at money mindfulness, it's the practice of taking those emotions and how you feel about money and applying it
Uh-huh.
into this. It's your goals have to align with your beliefs.
Yeah.
That is so important. And that money mindfulness of being present, acknowledging your feelings, acknowledging your beliefs, and then moving forward that way is a great way to definitely um achieve your goal, to achieve what
Yeah.
it is that you're looking to do. Yes.
Yeah. And, you'll be more aware of your spending if you're practicing money mindfulness. And then you could, gradually change your money habits using it. And, in addition to money mindfulness, another kind of buzzword, like you mentioned, is financial intentions too. So can we talk about that? And then can that help someone achieve their financial goals as well?
Actually, you may be even better at explaining this than I am, since I've got 20 years on you, quite frankly. Give me better
I
terminology,
think
Katie.
like financial intentions is, it's kind of looking at your overall like financial health. It's almost like giving your goal a reason, is if that makes sense. So it kind of
It
helps you
does.
accomplish it along the way. So, I think it's important to be mindful with your financial goals, and then think about what you're spending before you spend it is a great way to be mindful, something like that. And kind of in addition to that, with financial intentions, if something like you want to do is save money, I would always talk about like the 24-hour rule. Like, I'm a big online shopper.
Uh,
And I feel like if you really want it, just keep it in your cart for 24 hours and think about it. And if you really still want it in 24 hours, then get it. But I think most people will forget about it. So that's kind of being mindful with your money,
yes.
mindful setting intentions for it. But so yeah, that's kind of what I think financial intentions is putting a purpose to your financial goals. So it'll help you actually achieve it. That's what I think.
Well, I think that was beautifully said.
Oh,
And
thank you.
but before the age of online shopping, which
Yeah.
I too am definitely a supporter of the online shopping. One of the things that we used to tell people was, if you're going into the mall, leave your credit cards at
Mm-hmm.
home.
Yeah.
Don't bring them with you. And
Mm-hmm.
look at what you want to get, find stuff that's great. And if you still want it the next day and you're willing to drive back to the mall,
Right.
walk in and actually buy it, then you really want it.
Yeah.
So, I think your idea of that 24-hour pause
Mm-hmm.
is so important. And for a lot of us, you're exactly right. I mean, you don't even want to know how many shopping carts I've got filled in
I know.
with stores all over the internet,
I
because I
know.
went, oh, you know what? I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I'll come back. And by the time I came back, something happened and I completely
Right.
forgot about it. So
Right.
Very, very good point.
Yeah. And I really have to, you really have to think about it. And then, you probably don't want it. So, to kind of to wrap up a financial intention, I think it can help you remain focused and it could get you back on track with your goal if you need it to be. So I think,
Yeah, that's great.
you got to set an intention behind your goals to help you achieve them. So after you kind of like set your intention, you should check in with your goals as well to help you complete them as the year goes on. So how often throughout the year should you check in on those financial goals?
I like a quarterly check-in.
Mm-hmm.
So, for my clients, what I always have recommended is they check in on their goals, they check their budget quarterly, and then they do an annual wrap up where they get a look at their credit reports and just make sure that everything um, really worked for them by the end of the year. But unfortunately, life happens. We set financial goals, life happens, things change.
Right.
And that may alter our goals. By
Yeah.
looking at these goals every 3 months, it gives you a chance to make adjustments and to be a little bit more flexible when it comes to what needs to be done in order for you to achieve the goals.
Yeah. And, unexpected events and expenses happen all the time, as you just mentioned. So, how can you stay positive when trying to achieve your financial goals?
Well, I think that uh, with anything where there's a reward at the end of the line, in order to stay motivated, you have to give yourself a bit of a break. If for some reason something happens, you need to make a large car repair and you weren't able to save what you were planning on saving for 2 months, do not beat yourself up. What you need to do is you need to, it's going back to what we've been talking about, the mindfulness and intentions and all of that. We need to reflect inwardly and say, you know what? If I didn't have the cash to fix the car, I would have had to have put it on a credit card. Granted, it may push back my date of achieving my goal. But on the flip side, I am so much better off today than I would have been last year at this time because I have been watching and I have been mindful and I have been saving and doing what I was supposed to do. Yeah. So I think that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, definitely. And as you're keeping positive and checking on your financial goals, there could be a time where you kind of realize my financial goal is just too much for me to handle on my own. What should someone do then?
But at that point, I strongly recommend reaching out to a professional. Mm-hmm. Agencies such as Navicore Solutions. We can absolutely take a look at the work that you are doing and your financial goals and work with you on a budget through credit counseling to help you achieve that goal. And we can look at different plans if it's debt related, that if debt is what is holding you back, different options for you to help you get out from underneath some of that debt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And last month's podcast, I had Don and Lisa on from Navicore, and they went into depth about our whole entire credit counseling process and everything we do here at Navicore. So if you missed it, I will link that in the description of this podcast as well. But other than that, Kim, I think we have been able to set our financial goals for the new year and stick with it. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. And I wish all of your listeners a happy holidays and a wonderful new year.
Yeah, definitely. And go into the new year with a clean slate with your financial goals, and you guys will be able to achieve them as always. So thanks again for being on the podcast today, Kim. I'm sure we'll have you back in the future.
Oh, I look forward to it. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. The holiday season is in full swing, and the new year is just around the corner. Don't forget to consistently track your holiday spending and stay within your budget. Don't rely on credit cards for your holiday purchases. If you're shopping in person, only bring cash with you. This will ensure you're staying within your budget. When determining what goal you want to set for the next year, make sure it's a SMART goal. By making your goals SMART, you're more likely to achieve it. You can also create smaller goals in addition to your bigger goals. Those smaller wins along the way are just what you need to keep yourself going in pursuit of your larger financial goal. Set an intention for your goal. A financial intention can help you remain focused and keep you on the right track. Practicing money mindfulness is another way to stay on top of your financial goals. Money mindfulness is the state of being aware of your money and being conscious of what you're spending. By practicing money mindfulness and having financial intentions, you'll be sure to accomplish those goals. Check in on your financial goals quarterly throughout the year. Unexpected events can happen, and checking in on your goal will determine what you need to do to get back on track. Stay positive if something unexpected does happen to you. So give yourself a break and regroup. If you're really struggling achieving your financial goals on your own, it's okay to seek professional help. If debt is your problem, a nonprofit credit counseling agency such as Navicore Solutions is here to help. We are also gearing up to have an Ask Me Anything episode of Millennial Debt Domination. If you have any financial questions you'd like answered, you can send them to the email in the description of this podcast, or you can reach out to us on social media, and you'll also find our social media handles in the description of this podcast as well. We'll even be taking audio questions, so you might be able to hear yourself on the podcast. With that being said, that wraps up another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review us there. I'll talk to you next time, Millennials, Gen Zers, and everyone else listening. And I hope everyone has a safe and healthy new year. Bye.